there should be no correlation between any Israeli laws and what people think of Jews in the United Kingdom. That is anti-Semitism. Ambrosine and I are doing another live broadcast. You can see Ambrosine there and you can see me here. And the reason we're doing this is because this week the Board of Deputies of British Jews put out a statement that about the new Israel nation state law. And we consider the statement to be abhorrent. We consider it a statement that places that actually helps to support our detractors. So we want to talk about this, and we want you to come in and chat with us. I see Ambrosine seems to have disappeared for a second.
I'm here.
Are you there? Okay, so we want to talk about this because the statement was interesting for a few things. The first thing that was interesting for me about it is the poor grammar, the lack of context, the English language used in it, the punctuation, the fact that it made statements, but it didn't actually tell anybody what it was talking about. The fact that it was signed by the senior vice chair of the Board of Deputies and not the chair of the Board of Deputies. And so many questions arise as to who actually produced this document and why it was seen fit to put out a public document about a law that was passed in the Israeli Knesset that actually has nothing to do with with Jews who live in the diaspora, who are not citizens of Israel, who don't vote in Israel, and whose children don't go into the army to give their lives for keeping Israel safe. So we just want to talk about this, and I'll bring Ambrosine here, bring her in now to say something.
Yeah, look, there are 250 to 300,000 Jews apparently in the UK. And we're talking about Jews who we know of, because whenever there is a survey, not every Jew will say that they are Jewish. So we assume that there are about between 250 to 300,000 Jews. Out of those 250 to 300,000 Jews, apparently in 2017, there was a survey that said that 80,000 households, and this is a survey that was done late last year, that the Board of Deputies used as a recommendation, that 80,000 households in the United Kingdom are members of synagogues, and that could be Reform, Liberal, Masorti, Orthodox, the Union synagogues, etc. These do not include people that are Haredi, Chabadniks, Likudniks, people that are ultra-Orthodox or who don't go to synagogue. So what we have here is a representation of an organization. Thank you. Liel, could you just go out for a minute? Thank you. So we have a representative of an organization that is not representing the majority of Jews, including Israelis who come into the country. And what they're doing is they're bringing out statements. So every maybe 3 times a week, they will bring out a statement on whether it's for Brexit, for Trump, regarding the Israeli law, on BDS, on anti-Semitism, predominantly Israel-based. So they will be talking about how politics, or how the politics of the UK are supposedly affecting the Jews of the country. And we, as Jews here, are not represented by these statements. They are put out, I would say, in a way that they haven't spoken to the community about them. They do not understand, or they do not know what they're feeling. And this Israeli law statement was absolutely one example, just one out of many of the statements they've made, which is not asking the community what they think about this law. And why should they be releasing a statement? Why should they be releasing a statement about Israeli policy anyhow? Sharon, have you got the statement there? While I just get
I haven't, but I can call it up here. I've got my computer here. I'll just call it up for you if you hold on. Just give me an opportunity to find it. Hang on. It's going to be here in a second.
And just as you know, that the Board of Deputies recently changed their president. So now we have Mary van der Zeel as president, and we have members of the Board of Deputies who are salaried. paid members or staff at the Board of Deputies, predominantly from the Labour Party. Julian Merrin was an ex-Labour member. We have others there who are at Labour. We have a strong Yakada UK part and membership of the Board of Deputies. And in fact, when you see a lot of these statements, you'll see Yakad UK, who recently shared information and reshared a BDS social media tweet, quite one of many actually, asking for funds and donations. So you can see where this is going. That we have, unfortunately.
So I've got the statement here for you.
We don't want to read it out.
Okay, this is the pure statement. It comes without a heading, it comes without any preamble, and it comes in quote marks, very big red quote marks. And it says, whilst we celebrate Israel's Jewishness, there is concern that some of the measures in this law are regressive steps. Among Israel's great strengths are its democracy and diversity, comma, capital B, for being Jewish is a wonderful thing. But this should not lead to down others, should not lead to doing down others. All people should be valued, and Israel's Arab and other minority populations should be a treasured part of society. The lesson of Jewish history is that societies are stronger when minorities are affirmed, and they decay when minorities are degraded. We will be writing to Israel's ambassador to express concerns of these measures. Now, there are a number of issues in here. The one thing is the poor grammar. It looks to me like it's written by a GCSE student who probably got a C grade. The punctuation, the lack of context, the whole idea of using a language that says doing others down, or saying pompously that Arabs should be a treasured part of society, like they're a diamond or a jewel, and that they're not human beings. So the whole language of this, to me, smacks of something that has been very ill thought out. I have looked at this nation-state law, and it's got very little in it, except that it really just reaffirms the Declaration of the Independence of the State of Israel in 1948. It says things like this, that Israel is the historic homeland of the Jews. Well, that's a fact. And they say that the Jews have a unique right of national self-determination. Well, nobody denies that. I just heard Mr. Bistani on Sky News tonight saying that Israel has a right to that the Jews have a right to self-determination. It says what the flag is. Well, everybody knows the Israeli flag. It says something a bit contentious maybe, but something that Jews have never given up on, is that Jerusalem is the united capital of Israel. And maybe that's something that Mrs. Gewab might have wanted to discuss. But as far as we're concerned, Jerusalem is always the capital of the Jewish people. It says the official language is Hebrew, which is true. It says Arabic has a special status, which is true. And it also says that Israel will be open to Jewish Aliyah, which is, it happens that Israel is a state that has the right of return for all Jews. That was in the Declaration of Independence. Israel will work with the diaspora to preserve the affinity between Israel and Jewish people. Nothing wrong with that. Israel will ensure the safety of Jewish people and work to present the cultural, historical, and religious heritage of Jews in the diaspora. I don't see anything wrong with that. The state places national value on development of Jewish settlement and will act to encourage and promote its establishment and consolidation. There's also nothing wrong with that. The Balfour Declaration stated that Jews have a right of settlement in the boundaries of the Palestine Mandate. So I don't see anything wrong with that. Where are we?
But before, rather than now talking a little bit about the grammatical part of the statement, we've got to sit back and listen to this, because the Board of Deputies believe that they are representing every single Jew that belongs to a synagogue in the United Kingdom, and that every statement that comes out, they believe that they have collaborated or they've spoken to the members of the Board of Deputies. They believe that these statements that come out reflect the feelings and the attitudes of the Jewish community regarding, for example, when Trump came over, there were statements saying that they worry, or they've worried about his attitude, that some comments will consider being racist and sexist, that they've spoken about his divisive campaign, and that America remains a beacon of progress, tolerance, free thinking, that they do not elect the US president, that it's down to the American people, etc. Brexit was a similar case in point. With Brexit, that it was a statement that believed that we as Jews do not believe in Brexit. So what is happening here is that there is this, I would say, this political left agenda coming out, not only with Israel, which they shouldn't be dealing with, because I don't believe that the Board of Deputies should have a say-so on particularly political matters of Israel. But when they're talking about things like Brexit, they haven't asked the community. I personally don't belong to a synagogue. I know hundreds of other people that do not belong to synagogues, Israelis that come over, and also the ultra-religious. Where are they getting this sort of idea that people are against the Israeli law, people were against Trump, people are against the vote and the results of Brexit? How does this work? Because
well, I think Abrazine, there's a problem here that the Board of Deputies says that they're the voice of the Jewish community with a TY on the end, as though Jews are a homogenous group, that all Jews think the same, as though we're not a diverse group of people. And you only need to look at the makeup of the Jewish communities in this country. You'll find that there are Jews ranging from extreme left to extreme right politically. You find that there are people who are secular, people liberal, orthodox, Haredi, etc., etc. So for them to say that they're the voice of the Jewish community and then put out highly politicized statements like the statement they made against President Trump. There may be many people who don't like the choice that the American people made for president, but they made that choice. And America happens to be the biggest ally, not only of Israel, but also of the UK. And for the Jewish Board of Deputies to make a statement against the elected president of the staunchest ally of the West is absurd. It's actually incorrect. It's not their business. They need to go to America and welcome the new president, because the new president is the person we have to work with. So that alone is crazy. For them to have a stance on Brexit, except perhaps as an analysis on a proper academic analysis on how would this affect Jewish people in this country? How would it affect the relationships between Jews in this country and Jewish communities in Europe, etc., etc. But for them to actually take a stance on whether they want to remain or to leave is not right. The Board of Deputies has got a little bit bloated. It's got too many deputies on it. It's got too many divisions. Why it's got an international division, why it's circulating the country, going on anti-racism drives, why it's involved with an Islamic organization like Tel Mama, God knows. You know, this has to be questioned. It's not their business.
Sharon, I did call them and spoke to Simon Round in the press office. In fact, I tried to call them for quite a few hours and no one answered the phone. So we have a mismanagement here on the reception side, and this is not just yesterday. This has been for many years. So I called the press office and I anonymously spoke to them, and I said, first of all, I asked, who are your affiliated organisations? Now we know that Tell Mummy UK is an affiliated, not an affiliated organisation, but everything that happens regarding Muslim issues, particularly whether it's Muslim issues in this country or Muslim issues abroad, they will confer with Fiaz Magal. They have Yakad UK, who is another organisation which is affiliated. And so I asked if there any of these affiliated organisations are listed on their website, because we couldn't find them. And they said, I'm sorry. Oh, well, we don't have a list of them on the website. So I said, are you planning to put the affiliated organisations on your website? Because as you know, they're a Christian one of the Christian organizations, which is like an umbrella church. Do you remember the name of it? Which has openly reported information which is against Israel. You need to turn your volume down, Sharon.
Yeah, I've just turned it down.
So, you know, you've got organizations that are affiliated with the Board of Deputies, in some respects, basically are working against Israel. The statements seem to be putting out are working against Israel. And if you look down all of the statements that are made here, particularly, you're talking about the Israeli law. They haven't spoken to anybody with Trump. They never spoke to anybody regarding Brexit. They never spoke to anybody. Surely, if they believe that they're representing the Jews that are members of synagogues, surely they would be putting out a small little survey to their members first to say, you know, this is, how do you feel on Brexit? How do you feel on Israeli state law? Simon Round said something interesting. He said, there's only a very small majority of Jews that basically are against what our statement said. How does he know that?
A small amount of Jews that what?
He said, as Simon Round said to me, I said, well, how do you know that, you know, that Jews in the UK feel the way you do about the statement that you made regarding the Israeli law? He said, we've only had a few Jews, a few people are against what we said. So basically, he's working on the assumption that most of the Jews in the UK support their statement.
The problem here is that I did a little bit of research following this, and what I found is that there are about 449 synagogues in this country, and according to this research, only something like 64 congregations actually belong to the Board of Deputies, and those are mostly the United Congregation, United Synagogue. I think there's some of the Reform, and about 20 Federation synagogues within that 64. It's the demography of Jews in this country. There's apparently almost 300,000. Official figures name it at something like 260, but apparently there are a lot of Jews who don't fill in that census form, either because they are secular or because they are Haredi and they don't fill in the form, or because they've intermarried and they're Jews, but they don't actually think of themselves in that way because they're not part of a community. So there are apparently something like nearly 300,000 Jews in this country. Interestingly, the majority of Jews live in Greater London, which was a surprise to me because I thought there was a small amount in Greater London, but the majority in Greater London, and of that, the majority live in Barnet and Hertsmere. So if we take a little stroll through Barnet, we'll find that the majority of Jews live in a certain section of Barnet. It's very clear where all the shops are for kosher produce, that center is Golders Green. And if you walk around Golders Green, you'll see that the majority of those people are Haredi Jews, and they do not belong to the Board of Deputies. They never heard of it. They don't know what it is. And I'm pretty sure Simon Round wouldn't have knocked on their doors to get their view on the nation-state law of Israel.
But when you look at the statement that was made by Sheila Gowald, it is her statement. So
it says it's her statement.
Sorry?
It says it's her statement.
It's her statement.
But you know that rumors sort of start spreading when things like this, contentious things like this, come out. And I understand, having run an organization myself, not a Jewish organization, I ran a fairly big dental organization, a European-wide dental organization. And I can tell you, as the chief executive of that organization, a lot of the preparation of statements was done by me. However, they were never put out until the president of the organization had checked through them and edited them and put his tweak on them and made sure that statement reflected what the organization wanted to say. I have a sense here, because this is signed by the senior vice president, that this wasn't the case here. The chief executive would have put out this statement. I don't see that an honorary officer spends their time drawing up statements, because they don't have that time. They've got jobs. They don't get paid. So the paid staff would be drawing up stuff like this. They would be told, we need a statement on a topic. They would go away, do the research, prepare the statement, and it then should be run by the president and by the whatever council, the executive council that runs that organization.
But
that is how it should work.
But you
and
have
it did work that way. Sorry, Ambrosine.
No,
let me just finish this point.
Sharon, just
if it works that way, which is how a democratic organization should work, then I'm afraid this statement is so erroneous and so out of step that the president and all of the honorary office should resign today. I'm done.
If you go to the actual statement itself, and just for one moment, who actually runs the board of deputies social media? So, you know, the person who runs the social media side of it put this out pretty quickly, because yes. I was watching very, very closely after the Israel law was announced, how quickly this social media statement was made. When, as you said at the beginning, when you look at the grammatical side of it, Jewishness, and then coming out and saying it's being Jewish is a wonderful thing. What a very strange thing to say. What a very strange, you know, being Jewish is a wonderful thing. But this should not lead to going to doing down others, which is
and doing down others, and the Arab population should be treasured. Excuse me, treasured? How patronizing can you get? You know, are the Arab population not equal human beings to anybody else, that they have to be treasured like some little puppy dogs?
And another part is here, the lesson of Jewish history, that societies are stronger when minorities are affirmed. Tell me what minorities in Israel are not affirmed. What minorities in Israel, when they said that they decay when minorities are degraded, what minorities in Israel are actually degraded?
Could
you tell me?
Well, not only what minorities are not affirmed, but what country in the entire world will have democratically elected enemies of a state sitting in their parliament? Because this is really what they have. They have a caucus of people in the Knesset who count themselves not as Israelis, they count themselves as Palestinians, and they stand with the Palestinian Authority, which is not an Israeli government, it's not Israel. And so how many countries in the world would actually sanction that? For instance, I know now that the IRA is rehabilitated, but when the IRA were fighting the British government, did we actually have IRA terrorists as a caucus within the British government? We didn't. I mean, it would have been absurd for anybody to think that we should have that. Israel even allows that. Israel even sees to its enemies wounded and sends them back so they can get their arms and fight Israel.
But look,
I mean, how can they say that in Israel there are minorities that are not equal citizens in Israel? Okay. It's a ludicrous statement.
This I think really now, I mean, if you look back on the statements of the Board of Deputies, every single statement, politically motivated statements, particularly on British issues, of Brexit, and we can see that they are against Brexit, and you can see that they were against Trump, when the majority of people that support Israel and the majority of people in the UK are actually particularly supportive of Trump. But this leads really nicely into what's been happening at the Board of Deputies over the past, I would say, year and a half. We were talking about the affiliate organisations in the Board of Deputies, which they have not advertised. So you go to the Board of Deputies website and you try to look at affiliated organisations. Now, who in their right minds, as a normal working Jew, would understand what the affiliated organisations to a leadership or supposedly leadership organisation does? And when you go closely into what's happening to the Board of Deputies, I think this leads quite nicely on to a friend of ours called Rosalind Pine. Now,
yes,
Rosalind Pine, when you actually, a few weeks ago, a lady called Rosalind Pine, who's an upstanding member of the Jewish community, whose father, I believe, led was part of the Finchley Union synagogue actually starting, who is a very well-respected member of the Board of Deputies and the community, and she put some comments apparently on social media, which reflected her views. So her views on Islamic anti-Semitism, her views on Arab anti-Semitism, her views on terrorism and supporting Israel, and she is a staunch Zionist. We know that affiliated to the Board of Deputies at the moment, talking about Muslim groups and monitoring, you know, the third-party organization monitoring Islamophobia crimes, who tried to sue Jewish activists in 2013 and non-Jewish activists, is Tell Mama UK. And one of the main statements that came out when, unfortunately, they got rid of Rosalind Pine because they exposed some tweets by somebody who they did not mention, had written something about Arabs, and this was apparently Islamophobic, and actually commenting on the article, on the statement itself, which was put in the Jewish Chronicle, was a man called Fias Magal. Now, if you ask any member of the Jewish community who the board, like you said before, who the Board of Deputies is, what does it do, who do they represent, they would obviously say, well, the Board of Deputies is a leadership organization and they represent the Jewish people. Who knew that the Board of Deputies now is actually representing the Muslim community against Islamophobia? How does that work?
So what we have here, that you came in with Rosalind Pine, this is really quite important, because it seems that these tweets that didn't originate with Rosie Pine, they were retweets. So they're not really her own statements. Some of them were made in 2014, I think, a long time ago.
This was actually, it was around the war. It was around Protective Edge.
Protective Edge, which was 2014.
Yeah.
And so the Board of Deputies under previous president and honorary officers has actually had this on file for many years now. And I would imagine in being sensible, they decided that there was nothing to answer here, recognizing that the Board of Deputies has to be comprised of a broad spectrum of thought process, people who have different thoughts, people who have different political identities, and so on. So it's very odd that no sooner had this new presidency come in, and new officers been elected and new chairpersons of divisions being brought in, that this was brought up again. And the interesting thing for me was that in the JC, two things happened. The one was that, what's his name, Ben Weiss, said something like, the Jewish Chronicle has investigated and therefore they found Rosie Pine guilty. I didn't know that the Jewish Chronicle ran a police force. I didn't know that they were members of the Board of Deputies. Then subsequent to that, a result of the hearing was sent out to every board member. Each board member received a document regarding the result of the hearing. On the top of it, it said confidential, and no sooner had this been emailed to the deputies than it appeared in the Jewish Chronicle. So the question is, does the Jewish Chronicle have a lead into the Board of Deputies that they get inside information? This is not right. And the second question is, in one of the articles, it actually quoted Fayez Magal as saying that, what did he say? He said, he made a comment about how the Board of Deputies cannot...
He said the board has attracted criticism, right? So it looks like he's attracted criticism of its inaction over the allegations against Mrs. Pine. Now, let me just explain to you that Fayez Magal, who started Tell Mama UK, is part of the CST. Well, Richard Benson of the CST, who now works as a board, on the board of tackling anti-Semitism of the Board of Deputies, was paramount in starting Tell Mummy UK. So
well,
now
he's one of the CEOs.
He's one of the CEOs. So we now have a very, very strange,
and he's head of a division on the board.
We have a very, very strange connection. We have Richard Benson on the board of anti-Semitism, who was part of the CST, who brought together Tell Mummy UK and Fies Magal, who is now one of the, I suppose, affiliate organisations telling the board of deputies what to do about Muslims and Islamophobia, or Islamophobia, hate crime, or anything that is targeting Islam or whatever. And one of the statements was made that Fies Magal, an anti-Islamophobia campaigner with links to the board, said it could, inverted commas, undermine interfaith work between the Jewish and Muslim communities. How on earth would that work? Do the board?
What are these links that Magal has with the board of deputies? How come we run an organization called Campaign for Truth? We don't have those links, and we're Jews. We're part of the Jewish community. We have no say. We have no vote. And how come this guy, who some of us don't actually approve of, has links into the Jewish community? And what is this notion of doing interfaith work with other faiths and yet not doing inter-community works with members of its own community?
And here is the
rub. For instance, has anybody from the board knocked on your door, Ambrosine, as a person who has run Iron Anti-Semitism for something like, nearly 12 years now?
Mm-hmm.
Has anybody from the community actually knocked on your door and said, let me do some inter-community work with you. Let me see what you're up to.
Never.
Let me understand, why do you spend your time doing this, for instance. Secondly, we have a video of our very first round table that we did, because this leads on to something else now.
Yeah.
Our very first round table took place here in my house, and we called that round table meeting because we were very disturbed about the rise of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. And you have to remember that this round table took place just before, or just around about the time where Corbyn was first elected as leader of the Labour Party. Am I right, Ambrosine?
Yeah.
Was he already leader of the Labour Party? I can't remember. But as soon as we got an inkling of the rise of Labour Party anti-Semitism, before the Chakrabarti report, before any of the witnesses sent in information to the Labour Party, we had this round table here. We had about 30 people, and we will be posting that video again for you to see. I don't recall the board calling us up and saying, hey, you're onto something. We should be looking into this. Come and work with us and help us on this. And now we fast forward, the news today is full of people. Simon Johnson was interviewed, Adrian Cohen was interviewed, and we have this headline across the Jewish newspapers, United We Stand, or something like that.
Yeah, well, they weren't standing up against Corbyn then, because 3 years ago, when we
they're
were
still
working,
not standing up against Corbyn,
when we were working on the first list of with Mark Harriman, when we were working on the first list of Labour anti-Semites,
exactly.
And no, we actually I contacted the board of deputies then. I spoke to them at reception. Again, they didn't answer the phone because the board of deputies reception is never manned, probably between lunchtime. And they weren't interested, obviously. I didn't get a call back. But quickly,
no. And so how many years ago? That was over 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Nearly 3 years
3 years ago.
Okay.
And no interest from the board of deputies. And even now, the guys who were sitting and being interviewed, because they get called in, because they work for organizations that people recognize. So they get called in. I'm looking at it now on my screen. It's up again, United We Stand, in 3 newspapers. Those two guys, one on Channel 4, one on Sky News, neither of them would call out Corbyn for being a patron of the PSC, BDS, that he's actually propagating a lot of the propaganda that the man Bistani took the opportunity to air on Sky News, which went worldwide, by the way, and nobody stood up to him. Nobody stopped him, because our representatives said they were sticking to the point of anti-Semitism, not identifying the link between anti-Semitism and the PSC and what Bastani was representing. They didn't see that link, because why won't they see it? Tell me.
I think what's happening is I think what's happening is that we do not have a Jewish leadership that represents us. I don't think we ever have. If they did represent us, they would have picked up on these things a long time ago. Okay, so
you've gone a little bit silent. Get back to your microphone.
I can't actually because I've got people surrounding me now. Okay. They would have picked up on these things a long time ago. It was years and years ago I talked about Islamic anti-Semitism that is hitting social media. That was ignored. It was Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party and the anti-Semitism, the list that we had, that was ignored. And now we're talking about the problems with the Israel law and them actually going against the Israel law. That will be ignored. Every single thing. They do not ask the Jewish community. I don't know even somebody in a synagogue that's been asked these questions of whether they support the Israel law or not. So when we go back to the particular issue, we have a problem because we have a representation of a supposed Jewish community that do not think the way that the border deputies think, and that's why that they do not.
The reaction is knee-jerk.
If
they felt that the nation-state law was something that they should have something to say about, they should have sat back like any intelligent person would do. They should have had consultations with the various leaderships across the country. They should have sought out opinions whether this law does in fact affect us here or not. They should have done a lot, not even a survey. They could have started behind the scenes talks to rabbis, to leaders of communities, to leaders of organizations, to the grassroots groups, in fact, who are on the ground and listening to the propaganda on a daily basis. There are many, many people they could have done. What I'm saying is they should have quietly done their research and their consultations, and then if they had to make a statement, it should have been done privately behind the scenes. Go and see the ambassador before you threaten that you're going to go and see him. Go and see the ambassador, find out what he has to say, and if you have to, fly to Israel and have a chat to Bibi Netanyahu. After all, the Board of Deputies has a lead into Israeli government. It didn't have to do this very silly, childish, immature, knee-jerk statement that in fact, just 1 second, what this is doing is feeding the anti-Semites fodder, because what they don't follow are the social media outlets that we follow that actually pick up on their live streaming of their plenaries and quote what the Jews are discussing, and they use it against us. This, for me, is the biggest crime that they've committed by putting out this statement. You can be sure that people like Ben White are going to be using this against us. There's no doubt about it. When the season starts again with Apartheid Week, after the summer's over, we're going to hear all about it.
Well, it's very interesting. Well, let's bring back one of their mouthpieces, who are Yakad UK. When Yakad UK, who take our children to Israel, propagating lies, taking them on tour with Breaking the Silence, taking on them tour with B'Tselem, reshares BDS, begging them for funding, begging them for money. This is all quiet. This is hushed under the table, because we know, you and I know, the reason that border deputies do not want to put the affiliated orgs on their website is because they do not want the community to know who they're affiliated to. This is the thing.
Absolutely.
If you wanted people to know, they've had 20 years, 15, 10 years, even in the last 2 years, they've had now 2 presidents of the Board of Deputies, under Arkush, even under Vivian Wyman, and under this one now, that they do not post on their website who this organization is affiliated to. I wonder how many people would be shocked to find that if they do list the affiliated orgs, whether they would be supporting them.
Well, there's no list of affiliated organizations. I've managed to obtain a list of the synagogues that are affiliated to the Board of Deputies, and there are very few organizations actually affiliated to it. One of them being Yakad UK. And of course, Yakad UK is an extremely left-wing, pernicious organization, as you said, that feeds indoctrination to our youngsters, taking them on tours supposedly of Israel, but not really going anywhere near what the sort of main Israeli sites that you would take a first-time visitor to. Instead, they're going to to places like to visit the Al Tamimi clan. And we all know the connections of the Al Tamimis to the BDS and to the delegitimization of Israel. We know, for instance, that one of the Tamimi parents is actually banned from going to America. So these are the kind of people that they take for our children to meet. And if you look at their schedule, I happen to have a schedule of one of their tours, and they have very short meetings with anybody that's got anything to do with the current Israeli government. Like they will have a half-hour breakfast meeting, and they will have whole day trips to the Al Tamimis, whole day trips to Hebron, and so on and so forth, whole day trips talking to Breaking the Silence and B'Tselem. And then they will have a little journey into Israel where they will go to the British ambassador's residence for a meeting. No such thing as Beit HaTfutzot or Yad Vashem, all of this stuff doesn't seem to appear on their list.
If you look on their website, Sharon, and you look at the statements, you monitor their social media on Twitter, you will find there is absolutely no difference between the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign statements or Brighton BDS or the WMPSC and that of Yakad UK. Now, this week I put on the Monitoring BDS room about one of the main campaigns of the PSC today, and one of the main campaigns of the PSC is regarding the village that they believe that is going to be demolished in Israel, and they're talking about the same thing, the Khan al-Ahmar, the demolitions. And the PSC and all of what they actually put on their website is exactly the same propaganda, the same campaigns, and the same support of every single item that the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign will put up. So what is the difference between Yakad UK and the PSC? One says they are supposedly Jews who are Zionists, and the others will say that they are anti-Zionists, but they're absolutely the same. There is absolutely no difference. And they still haven't been banned and boycotted from Israel.
I was told by the UK Zionist organization that they have to embrace any movement that's Zionist. So perhaps we have to have a definition now of what a Zionist is, because my understanding of Zionism is basically the support of a Jewish nation state. And if you don't support a Jewish nation state, I don't understand how you can be a Zionist. I'm not even commenting whether it's good or bad, but it's actually just not, it's not compatible to call yourself a Zionist and then go against the Jewish nation state.
So let's go back to the subject that we were talking to tonight, because I have to go soon. So we're talking about the Israel law. There are only a few, well, there are quite a few people that are against the Israel law in principle. We've put this in. It's the Iranian Islamic regime. It is the boycott divestment movement organizations, the PSC, etc. It is the anti-Zionist brigade. It is those that wish to see the annihilation of Israel, and Jewish Voice of Peace, etc. So what we're seeing here is an alignment of the views of the anti-Israel boycott movement and our own establishment, supposedly leader organizations of the Jewish community. We are seeing a huge sort of like squeeze into exactly the same. Apart from the names of the organizations, you wouldn't know which is which anymore. And this is what I'm seeing.
And also I understand that the Arab caucus in the Knesset is against the nation state law. And it's a law that just affirms their right to be MKs in Israel. So I don't understand that sort of thing. So really what brought us here today to talk, and we seem to have gone round in a big circle, but I think they're all related. What brought us here to speak is the controversy over the objection to the nation state law. And I think we need to make it very clear that as Jews who live in the diaspora, it's not for us to dictate to the Israeli government what laws they should pass in a democratically elected parliament. And for us to say that what they do has an effect on us here it's in a way confirming an acceptance of anti-Semitism, that somebody else can be blamed for somebody treating us in a way that we shouldn't be treated as Jews, simply because a country over there, 5 hours away on an aeroplane, something to say, and passed a law in their government. There should be no correlation between any Israeli laws and what people think of Jews in the United Kingdom. That is anti-Semitism. It seems that Ambrosine has left the conversation, so I'm going to end this now. And please continue to comment. Are you still there, Ambrosine? No. Please continue to comment. Please continue to have your say. Come back to us if you want. And when we're ready, we'll have another one of our live streamings. Thank you for watching, everybody.